corral people for several minutes. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Sarah Eggers, and I'm in the Office of Strategic Programs here within the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research here at FDA. I'm going to be the discussion facilitator today, and I am delighted that we are finally here at the meeting. I'm especially delighted since my voice came back on Saturday. This would have been a physically impossible task for me to do because I lost my voice. So if I start to lose it in the middle of today, just let me know, then I'll try to speak closer to the microphone and someone can bring me some water if they see me struggling. Our meeting today is part of our agency's patient-focused drug development initiative, which is focused on gathering patient perspective on functional GI disorders. We'll hear some more background about that in a little bit. And Donna Griebel is going to come up and give some opening remarks in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to ask my colleagues at the FDA table to go through and say your name and where you are located within the agency and push the red button to turn the mic on.
I'm Donna Griebel. I'm the Division Director in the Division of Gastroenterology and Inborn Errors Products.
Good afternoon. Andrew Mulberg, Division Deputy in Gastroenterology and Inborn Errors Products.
I'm Laurie Muldowney, and I'm a clinical reviewer within the same division.
Hi, I'm Teresa Mullen, and I direct the Office of Strategic Programs in the Center for Drugs.
Laura Demick, and I'm also a medical reviewer in the GI division.
Preeti Venkataraman, also a clinical reviewer in the same division.
Sarit Kovac, study endpoints reviewer in Office of New Drugs.
Thank you very much. And we will learn your names in a little bit as we go through the discussion. So I would like to thank those of you who are in person and also to the folks that are on the web. We have a very, very strong turnout on our web and participating by web today. There will be every opportunity for those on the web as well. We have a full agenda this afternoon. We'll first spend a little bit of time setting the context and have my FDA colleagues provide some background on our initiative and on the functional GI disorders. And then we're going to get into the whole purpose for our discussion, which is listening to you. I will go over the meeting format and the process before we get into that discussion. Our two main topics are the disease symptoms that matter most to patients, followed by patient perspective on current approaches to treating functional GI disorders. We have time set aside for open public comment this afternoon. While the primary focus of our discussion is really dialogue with patients living with functional GI disorders, open public comment gives anyone a chance to offer a perspective or experience or a comment at the end of the meeting. So anyone can comment. And to participate, you'll sign up at the registration desk if you haven't already. We'll close that registration sign up at the break. And it's a first come, first serve. The time allotment will probably be on the order of 2 minutes. There is a kiosk with food and beverages, and restrooms are located behind the kiosk toward the back wall in that lobby, and then all the way to the right. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Somewhere between 2:45 and 3 o'clock. It says 2:45 on your agenda, but I think our first discussion is going to be jam-packed, and so we'll let it slip a bit into that. So by 3 o'clock, we'll be taking a break, but please feel free at any time. This is a very informal setting, an informal meeting. Get up when you need to, do whatever you need to, and make yourselves comfortable, and let us know if there's anything that you need. The meeting is being transcribed, and a live webcast is being recorded and will be archived on our website. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Donna, who will give some welcoming remarks.
Good afternoon, and I welcome you as well to this patient-focused drug development meeting on functional GI disorders. You've already heard that I'm Donna Griebel. I'm the Division Director in the Division of Gastroenterology and Inborn Errors Products. Our division is the division in the Office of New Drugs that reviews drugs that are intended to treat functional GI disorders. We're grateful to all of you patients and patient advocates who came to the White Oak campus to be here with us today in the audience. And as well, I understand that we are joined by many, many more via web. Today's meeting is one in a series of what we're calling FDA's patient-focused drug development meetings. Teresa Mullen will be talking a bit more about this initiative in a few minutes. Functional GI disorders are common disorders. They're characterized by persistent and recurrent GI symptoms and occur as a result of abnormal functioning of the upper and lower GI tract. Disorders within this group include irritable bowel syndrome, gastroparesis, chronic persistent symptomatic gastroesophageal reflux disease that persists despite standard therapeutic interventions, and chronic idiopathic constipation. Dr. Lori Muldowney will be, from our division, will be providing a bit more background information on these disorders in a few minutes. This is a very important meeting to us. We fully understand that functional GI disorders are serious conditions and that there is a great need for treatments for these disorders. It's FDA's responsibility to ensure that the benefits of a drug outweighs its risks. Therefore, having this kind of dialogue is extremely valuable for us. What we hear from you today can help us understand how patients view benefits and how they view the risks of treatments for these disorders. We want to hear from you today about the different ways your symptoms affect your daily life. It's also important to hear from you what you value in a treatment for functional GI disorders and what you would like to see in future treatments. It's important to remember that FDA is just one part of the drug development process. We do not represent the boots on the ground who are actually doing the drug development or conducting the clinical trials. Drug companies working with researchers and patient communities are the ones who conduct the trials and submit applications for new drugs to the FDA. We at FDA work closely with drug companies throughout the drug development process. We have frequent meetings with companies. We discuss early clinical trial designs. We discuss the results of those early clinical trials to give input on what the designs for the so-called pivotal trials that will be submitted to support the application for approval. We also look at the safety results from those trials and early safety information from animal data. I know there are a lot of representatives from industry, academia, and others in the room and on the web. We thank you all for being here and being a part of this meeting as well. We believe this meeting will be a valuable source of information for you too. So again, welcome everyone. I'll now turn it over to Teresa Mullen, who will talk about our broader efforts in patient-focused drug development.
Thank you, Donna, and good afternoon again. And as Donna said, I'm going to just tell you a little bit more about this initiative that we've undertaken. That this functional GI meeting is disease meeting is a part of this initiative for us. And as Donna was saying, FDA's job is to assess whether the benefits outweigh the risks for a given application, a given new drug, and a disease. And we get the evidence submitted to us by the sponsor, the so-called sponsor, the company sponsoring that application, and they collect that information in the clinical trials that they run. But what's very critical for us to understand is the context of this disease, and really the severity of this disease and the degree to which there's an unmet medical need, that the treatments that are currently available and on the market already, how well do they meet that need? How well do they treat that disease and that severity? And what we realized is that patients who are, well, you might think this is kind of a, why did it take the light bulb this long to go on? But that patients are in a very unique position to inform that, because patients are the ones who experience the disease. They're the ones that are going to use the treatment. Any benefits to be gained, they will be experiencing. Any risks they will experience. And they're uniquely positioned to tell us about the severity of the disease and what's the most impactful aspects of the disease for them, and whether or not the treatments that are available, if any, are effective. And so we wanted a more systematic way to get this kind of information. We have a very good patient representative program but we can only, we involve patients as individuals representing the whole community of patients, and they're helping us and looking at particular drug applications, particular matters, as the government calls it, and we also have to do some conflict of interest screening for that because of that particularity. We wanted to get a more widespread input from patients experiencing a disease, and that's why we set up these meetings. And so getting the information in this kind of by disease and not by particular drug enables us to have a larger meeting like the one we're having today. And those of you who've come, and thank you very much for coming to this meeting and being in the room and for joining us on the webcast. Your perspective on this disease really helps us to understand the context and make those better informed decisions, both in the development programs and companies coming in to talk about drugs in development and when we're looking at applications. So we set this up, this patient-focused drug development, that's the name we use to refer to these meetings, as a way to kind of pilot this idea of trying to get information in, in the context of the disease, not in the context of a particular drug application. And we're committed to do at least 20 of these meetings, each in a different disease area, over the 5 years of this program, the reauthorized PDUFA program that goes from fiscal year 2013 to 2017. And so we started in September of 2012, right before our new fiscal year. 13 was to start, put out a list of diseases, got public comment, got a lot of comment on that, and the first 16 of the diseases we're covering in the first 3 years were in response to that process of getting public input on our list, revising it, and putting it out there. And this is the list that we had for the first 3 years. And as you can see, we're working our way through to through the lists that we had to date, and here we are today covering our functional GI disorders meeting. And so, as I said, we really focus on the severity and what's it like to live with this disease, what are the most important impacts, and what are your experiences with current treatments. And Sarah showed you that our 2 sessions are organized around those 2 themes. We start out with that, but we also ask the review division, when our office is trying to help coordinate these meetings and setting them up, what other questions do you want to ask? It's a very special and unique opportunity for us to hear from patients with a disease about other aspects, maybe clinical trial participation, trade-offs that they think, questions that the review division would like answers to, like to hear from patients about. This is a golden opportunity to ask questions like that as well. So we tailor the meetings a little bit to the particular aspects of the disease and treatments associated with that disease. We find that patient advocacy groups and others have been actively helping us get the word out about the meetings ahead of time, has helped us to really make them a success because of the increased participation. And finally, what do we produce? At the end of these meetings, which we have the meeting, we have the webcast, we have a wonderful discussion here, we hear from a very rich set of panelists and their perspectives. We also have our docket. We leave open an electronic docket, so any documents or other information that people want to submit to us during or after the meeting, we leave that open for at least a month or so we can get that information in. We put all that together in what we call the Voice of the Patient report. And if you go to our website, you'll see the reports that we have posted there to date for the meetings we've already had. And we think these reports are helpful to our review divisions as a sort of a reference set they can go back and look at later, especially as applications come in associated with that disease. Industry sponsors have told us it's useful. And actually, we've heard from patients who have had the diseases that we've already had meetings about, and they have said the reports have actually been very helpful to them as well. We see them as maybe also a kickoff of a way to look at more systematic collection of this information that might even be done during clinical trials and used as part of that evidence base for deciding about whether the benefits exceed the risks. And with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to Lori to tell you more about the background on the disease. Thank you.
Sorry about that, just making sure I know how to work the clicker. My name is Laurie Muldowney again, and I'm a clinical reviewer within the Division of Gastroenterology and Inborn Error Products. And I want to thank everybody for coming today to provide us with really helpful and important insights as to what it's like to live day to day with a functional gastrointestinal disorder. Before we turn the floor over to you all, I was asked to just provide some brief background on some of the disorders that are represented today. So functional GI disorders is really a term used to describe a group of chronic GI disorders in which patients experience symptoms, but there's generally no anatomic or structural abnormality. So these diseases can affect anywhere from the esophagus to the rectum, and they're typically characterized by a chronic course and often with very unpredictable symptoms that can be disabling to patients. There's still a lot to learn about the underlying cause of functional GI disorders, but these are not psychological disorders. The signs and symptoms are thought to relate to a number of issues, including abnormal intestinal motility, abnormal intestinal perception, or abnormal brain-gut communication. Because there are no objective measures, though, for example, generally no abnormalities on a colonoscopy, the diagnosis is really based on patient signs and symptoms. There are approximately 45 functional gastrointestinal disorders, and this is based on the Rome 3 criteria. So the Rome criteria were established by an international group of experts in order to standardize the diagnosis and the classification for functional GI disorders. I've listed some of them here. Of course, this is not an inclusive list, and Donna mentioned several of these before. Irritable bowel syndrome, which can further be subdivided into constipation or diarrhea predominant or a mixed subtype. Chronic idiopathic constipation, functional dyspepsia, gastroparesis, and functional abdominal pain, again, are just some examples. Importantly, there is a lot of overlap between these conditions, and many, many patients we know suffer from two or more functional GI disorders. They're incredibly common. So some estimates suggest that at any one time, 2 out of every 5 people in the United States are affected by a functional GI disorder. And importantly, they impact across every demographic category, so across age, gender, race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. I've included some prevalence numbers here for some of the disorders that I believe are represented today, but as you can see, particularly irritable bowel syndrome, functional dyspepsia, and functional constipation, which we also call chronic idiopathic constipation, are very, very common. Oops. I'm having trouble here. Okay. So I mentioned before that some of the symptoms are thought to relate to abnormal intestinal perception and abnormal brain-gut communication. So this slide just really shows sort of that brain-gut communication that I mentioned. When we talk about abnormal intestinal perception, we're basically just implying that normal activities of the GI tract, so intestinal contractions, normal things that we expect to happen, cause pain or discomfort in patients, whereas a patient who is not suffering from a functional gastrointestinal disorder would not perceive that as painful. Abnormal brain-gut communication is referring to what we call the enteric nervous system, or the little brain in the gut. And this is really just a set of nerves throughout the GI tract that send signals to the central nervous system and vice versa. So in patients with functional gastrointestinal disorders, these interactions are impaired and patients experience pain, nausea, and other symptoms when they shouldn't. So some of the common signs and symptoms that you all are very well familiar with: pain, heartburn, abdominal distension and bloating, nausea and vomiting, constipation and diarrhea. We also see urgency, decreased appetite, swallowing difficulties, and incontinence. And again, I know that's not an inclusive list, but just some of the common signs and symptoms that are seen. So we understand that these conditions can have a significant impact on an individual's quality of life. Patients are impacted not only physically, but socially and emotionally as well. And misunderstanding, even in the medical community, can lead to misdiagnosis, unnecessary done in an outpatient basis. but I've seen numbers ranging from 1.5 to 10 billion for direct costs. And when we think about direct costs, we're basically talking about costs for doctor's visits, for hospitalizations and surgeries, and for medications, so things that are directly related to that diagnosis. But indirect costs are really even more astounding, when the estimates of up to 20 billion. So that's including the cost of lost work days, lost school days, those types of things, in addition to the costs of actually seeing your doctor and taking your medications. Of some treatment options. In general, dietary management is commonly used for these conditions, and there are a number of over-the-counter drugs that are commonly used. Antidiarrheals or promotility agents can be used to treat the diarrhea or constipation associated with some of these disorders. Proton pump inhibitors and H2 blockers are classes Metoclopramide, of course, is indicated for gastroparesis, and elocitron is indicated for irritable bowel syndrome with diarrhea, but is limited in that it's only actually indicated for women, and it has some restrictions because of some safety concerns. Off-label medication use, of course, patients are sometimes prescribed antidepressants, and there are also a few therapies, such as Zelnorm, domperidone, and cisapride, to name a few, which are not approved therapies for a variety of reasons, but which can be accessed through special programs for patients who have failed other treatment options. And finally, in gastroparesis specifically, gastric electrical stimulation has been used, and sometimes feeding tubes are necessary. So patient-reported outcomes for conditions like functional GI disorders where there's no structural or biochemical abnormality that we're necessarily tracking, input from patients is really particularly important. Patient-reported outcomes can, for us, represent a direct measure of treatment benefit. So if we can demonstrate that a therapy improves how patients feel or function in their daily life, which of course has to come directly from the patient, then that's a way that we can assess whether or not one of these treatments is providing benefit. These measurements need to be well understood and evaluated in what we call adequate and well-controlled trials. So when you're comparing against patients who are not on the same treatment, so that we can see how that would compare. So really, you know, these meetings are always very important, and it's always really helpful for us to get insights from patients and caregivers. But in a group of disorders like functional GI disorders, where we're really relying on that input to determine if drugs are working or not, I think it's really even more important. So we very much appreciate your time and your thoughts today. Oops. And that's it. Thank you.
I'm the last FDA person to speak for a while, and then we'll move to the patients. But I just want to go over the format and how this works. This meeting is quite different in format and style than what you might expect from a public meeting by a government agency. We're happy to say that. Our intent is really to foster open dialogue on about people's personal experiences living with their conditions. We are going to be navigating through the spectrum of GI disorders today. Our goal is not to focus on any one particular condition, but to identify the commonalities and perhaps the differences amongst your experiences and perspectives. We have the two topics. The questions that are really framing our discussion are found in the back of your agenda on the second page, and you can see those. And the first topic, again, focuses on the symptoms that matter most to you. Which ones have the most significant impact in your life? How do they affect your ability to do specific activities and how they change over time? What's critical to hear today is the specific examples of your symptoms. How do you describe them? What terms do you use? What activities can you not do? What might surprise FDA if they knew that you can't do this activity but you really want to, or you're limited in that activity? And what makes a flare, and what's the difference between your worst days and your best days? So we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. And then after the break, we'll come back and talk about the current approaches to treating functional GI disorders. And we know it's a complex treatment regimen. What we are going to try to tease out is what is the role of pharmaceutical treatments within that treatment regimen? How well are they working for you? What are their downsides? What do you wish they could do better? For each of those topics, we're going to first hear from a panel of patients. We have no caregivers. They're all patients today who will be coming up. And I'm going to ask those who are in topic 1 to start to make your way to the front and bring your name tags if you can. You can sit anywhere up here. The purpose of these panel comments is really to set a good foundation for our discussion by hearing brief snapshots of 4 different sets of experiences. Each of the panelists has prepared about 4 minutes of remarks. After that, we will move into a facilitated discussion, and we will engage all of the patients, caregivers, patient advocates in the room to really build on the discussion. What's similar to what you heard reflected up here? What's different? We have staff will be coming around with microphones, so you don't need to get up. We'll come to you. And I ask that you please state your first name. We don't need your last name, just your first name every time you speak so that we can capture that. And because we have so many conditions, please state your disorder or your primary disorder or a few disorders that you're speaking about. Please try to limit your responses and keep them focused to the topic that's being discussed or the question that's being asked, the symptom that's being talked about. We hope that we get to come to you several times, and so this will just help our discussion move forward. I'll ask periodically with a show of hands if you agree with what someone said or if you don't agree. So that's another way we can get input. We have also some polling questions which just give us a little bit more insight and aid our discussion. If we can hand out the little polling clickers. We have these little clickers that you can push a button. We're going to have some practice at this in a bit. These are not at all meant to be scientific questions or a polling or a survey of any kind. It's just to aid our discussion, know who's in the room, what kind of experiences you have, and where we can really move the discussion. We ask that patients and patient representatives only, please. And then the webcast. I mentioned that there's a strong showing on the webcast, and you are playing a very valuable contribution to this meeting. Sometimes the folks who are on the webcast are slightly different in terms of representation than the people in person, and we hope that you're typing furiously in response to the questions that we ask, and we're collecting all this information. We'll be summarizing. We will not read yours out. We'll be summarizing it periodically through the day, and it's being captured. We're also going to go to the phones occasionally to give those of you who are participating remotely an opportunity to contribute. I ask the same ground rules apply. Please keep your comments, if you're commenting on the phone, tailored to the topic that we're on so that we can gather a few more phone comments. We also want your comments, the comments from you and others who you know who haven't been able to attend the meeting. Reach out to your networks and get your peers and your colleagues and those of you in your support groups to also contribute to us by sending comments through the public docket. If there's something we can't get to today, we didn't flesh out in detail, you can also, we want you to comment as well. And that's basically a website that you visit. You click on a Comment Now button, and you can type in a comment or you can upload a Word document. If you have any trouble, go to the patient-focused email address that we provided. Our docket will be open until July 13. Again, these comments will be reviewed by us and summarized, included into our summary report. There are some more resources at FDA. I just want to point out to you, we have the FDA Office of Health and Constituent Affairs. And is someone from that office here today? Yes, in the back we have Andrea. So that office runs the patient representative program that Teresa talked about. So if you're interested in furthering your engagement with FDA, go find Andrea and she can give you more information. Within our seat, or the drug side of FDA, we have a professional affairs and stakeholder engagement. And is Chris here? He's floating around. So he's also one, you can stand up, Chris. He's also one that if you have questions, particularly if you're a patient organization and have questions or comments or want to continue to contribute, please identify him. And their information, our web slides will be posted so you can contact them directly. We have a few ground rules just to make sure that our discussion is as most effective for all of us involved. We really encourage patients to contribute to the dialogue. That's as a perspective we really want to hear. Caretakers, loved ones, and advocates, we want to hear your perspectives too. If you can, what your role is what might others that you know who have these conditions, what might their perspectives be, and can you round this out a bit to build on what we hear from the patients who are in the room? We are going to try to accommodate everyone who wants to share today, and if we don't get to everything that you want to share, that's what the docket's for. Please follow up with that. The industry, the others in the room, we ask that you stay in listening mode. There is an open public comment, as we mentioned, that you can contribute if you have something you'd like to share. The FDA is here to listen. We may not be able to address every question that may be on your mind about drug development, about FDA. Our role really is to listen to you. But there will be evaluation forms, and if you have a specific question, write it out there with your contact, your email, and we will try to find the answer to that question for you. As it's been described, our discussion is really narrowly focused: symptoms, impact, burden, and then treatment. We know that there are so many issues that you face regarding diagnosis, regarding getting the adequate care and support that you need. We're not going to be able to delve in as deeply to those topics today. Again, you can tell us that through the docket if you want to provide more of your thoughts on that. We also will be talking about treatments throughout the day. And our discussion, when we talk about treatments, it's not our intent to come out at the end of the day and say, this treatment works great, this treatment's not great. What we're looking is, what is it about treatments in general that you find beneficial? How do you know that they're beneficial? How do you know that they're working for you? And what are their downsides in general? That helps generally expand our context. The opinions expressed here are personal opinions, and demonstrating respect is of paramount importance. This discussion is going to touch upon very sensitive topics, and we respect you and appreciate so much your willingness and courage to share those. And everyone in the room is here to support. We want to hear from you. We want to learn from you. So we hope that you feel comfortable to share your thoughts. Finally, we want your feedback on the meeting. What we learn here today will help us as we continue to design and implement further future patient-focused drug development meetings. There are evaluation forms on the desk. Oh, okay, I guess we're on to the polling questions. Does everyone have their clickers? So when we ask the question, you can choose A, I think it's also 1, or whatever number corresponds to the right choice for you. So where do you live? Within the Washington, D.C. metro area. Click A. And B, outside of the metro area. And if you're on the web, you should be seeing these questions as well, and you just click in the right choice. So we can see the results. So 2/3 of you deal with the Beltway every day. 1/3 of you deals with the Beltway every day, and 2/3 of you you have the pleasure of only once in a while dealing with the Beltway. So thank you very much. And on the web, on the web,
90% outside of DC.
On the web doesn't matter. You're from all over, we hope. Are you male? A, B, female? Okay, We knew this coming in. We have a very robust representation from women, but as Laurie mentioned, this condition affects everyone. So on the web and in the docket, if you can go out and reach out to people who are men and get them to share their experiences, it's very important that we hear from men as well. Have you or your loved one ever been diagnosed as having a functional GI disorder? Okay. So for the remainder of the set of questions, some of you are here with the clickers. You're here as a loved one or as an advocate. For the purpose of the clickers, we're going to ask that the remainder of these questions that every clicker is for one person. So if you're the person living with the condition, you've got the clicker to it. Or if you're a caretaker and you're here on behalf of someone who's not here, use the clickers. But otherwise, please keep no more use of the clickers. Which of the following functional GI disorders do you have? We know some of you here have some things other than functional GI disorders. We think most of you have some form of a functional GI disorder, so you might be an other. You can choose all that apply. A, irritable bowel syndrome. B, gastroparesis. C, chronic persistent symptomatic gastroesophageal reflux, despite standard therapeutic interventions. Am I going to guess, if they have GERD, is this the one that is it close enough? Close enough. If you have GERD, do C. D, chronic idiopathic constipation. And D, some other. Okay. These numbers indicate, as Laurie said, many of you have multiple things, and it's great to see we have reflection of across the spectrum, some more than others. On the web?
43% irritable bowel syndrome, 60% gastroparesis, 27% GERD or other, and 29% chronic idiopathic, and 24% other.
Great, thank you. What is your age or your loved one's age? A, younger than 18, B, 18 to 30, C, 31 to 40, D, 41 to 50, E, 51 to 60, F, 61 to 70, or G, 71 or better. So this means that we have a robust range in the middle in person. And what do we have on the web?
A very similar range, 4% younger than 18, 9% 18 to 30, 31% for both 31 to 40 and 41 to 50, 14% 51 to 60, and 11% 61 to 70.
It's going to be very important if advocates and if others, if you can help support finding perspectives that can be shared through the docket on the pediatric and the older populations, that would be very helpful. We're going to be staying in this discussion today toward the middle. With that, we will move on to the topic 1 discussion. We're going to go through and ask each of you to share your remarks. You're going to push the red button. And we'll go through. There may be some clarifying questions we have at the beyond, but unless it's a real burning clarifying question, we'll probably just move right into the next person. So we will start with Tanya.
Hi, my name is Tanya Taylor. I have gastroparesis along with a number of other. I have the esophageal dysmotility, small intestinal dysmotility, and colonic inertia, which actually led to the removal of my colon. The 3 things, I'm going to read what I wrote. It's, I think, easier that way. The 3 things that are most bothersome for me in this life is the pain, nausea, and the inability to eat. I very rarely get a hunger pain, and that started quite some time ago. There are a number of specific activities I can't do. I cannot go out with friends and be able to keep up, and that's been 7 years. I guess it's been 7. I've lost most of my friends because of that. I do not sleep more than 3 hours at a time because of pain and tachycardia and shortness of breath. I've been unable to take normal showers for a couple of years because of the weakness and blackout spells that the water instigates. The routine for me to get washed up is it takes a 1 to 3 hour period for me to get washed up because I have to take too many breaks to rest. And once in a blue moon, my husband and I get to go to a friend's house, but I think it's been several years since we've done that. We used to go out and eat. That was one of our favorite things to do, and we haven't been able to do that for 5+ years. My granddaughter, I haven't been able to take her to the park by myself. I have to have an adult come with me because I'm just too weak. I'm 114 pounds now, but I was 94 pounds when I first started back on the IV nutrition again. And you have a little more strength being this weight, but I know when I was 94 pounds, I could even do less than I do now. On my bad days, I'm not able to get dressed. I'm too weak. I generally am in the bed. I haven't been able to do laundry, cleaning, cooking, anything like that in, I know, at least 4 years. And I used to love to clean, cook, and do all of those things. On my best days, it takes an hour to get washed up, and that includes the rest time. Putting my hair, using my muscles, I'm always fatigued, and it just kind of sets me back, so I have to get the energy to keep up. On the worst days, I could be hospitalized or throwing up constantly. I had to have 2 Botox injections because of that. And during the early stages, when I was younger, I've had pain and problems the entire time, constipation, diarrhea, bloody stools, all of that. And having to deal with that even in high school. I ended up having to eat baby food for one of the years in high school. And when I was real young, my grandmother would send me out back to pick mint, and she would chew on mint with me to get that nausea down. And then as I started getting into my 30s, this didn't become life-threatening until 2007. So I am living on IV nutrition, which I have with me. I stay on that during the day. If I use it at night, then I have to get up and go to the bathroom even more so, which interrupts that maybe 3-hour sleep I get. So I have to make sure I get sleep. And the symptoms are like a roller coaster ride. They do vary in degrees. I mean, today I'm sitting here and talking. I am in a lot of pain sitting here. The nausea is like dealing with food poisoning, and you just learn to live with this stuff. Doctors will look at me and not believe I'm in the degree of pain that I'm in and pass me over a lot of times because of it. And different things that make this worse, any type of stress, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Any of it makes it worse. I can have a great time and try to laugh. I end up having to hold my belly because the pain's too much. When everyone else is sitting around eating, most everything in the country revolves around food. There's nothing that doesn't revolve around food. So it's a health issue that keeps us out of normal functioning life. And for me, I was very active. I had owned my own businesses. I was a single parent for a long time. I'm remarried, but I have no life from this stuff. Doesn't seem that most people understand what's happening. And it's okay. And most people don't think it's as difficult as it is. They'll say that you can modify it with diet. Everybody's different. There's not one person that's the same. We might have similar issues, but somebody might be able to eat one thing that somebody else can't, and it's such an outlandish type of illness to get a hold of that you can't base, I guess, how one person is feeling on another. We're not the same in any respect.
Any final remarks, Tanya? Final points that you want to make sure you get across?
Thank you. Different types of foods that if I try to eat something that's a smoothie that has vegetables in it, the vegetables, even if they're juiced, will turn my stomach and make it into such pain that I'm on the floor in a ball or I'm in my bed in a ball. So those types of things do increase it, and anything with preservatives and anything like that. And remember.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Now we'll have Cynthia.
All right, technical difficulties. I'd like to thank FDA for having this meeting today and actually for inviting me to come and speak about my experience as a patient with irritable bowel syndrome. My name's Cynthia Benz, and I live locally. And I was diagnosed with IBS approximately 1.5 years ago. And I say I was diagnosed 1.5 years ago, but I feel like this is something I've really been dealing with since I was a teenager, all through my 20s and 30s. I have a family that's made up largely of boys, and not that they were unsympathetic, but I was just told most of my life that I had a nervous stomach. And it was mostly because every time I had any sort of abdominal symptoms, it was around the time that I had something really stressful going on at school or some really, emotional times in my life during a teenager. That really just forced me to accept it as a part of life. And then I hit my 30s. I think this is something that's probably going to be a theme. I see it already. I began experiencing a lot of cramping, a lot of bloating, and irregularity, and it was almost a daily occurrence. The cramping and bloating were so bad, and they still are for the most part, and they're the two symptoms that I'd say affect my life the most. At times they can be really severe, doubled over in pain, and on occasion I have to miss work because the cramping and bloating are coupled with loose and unpredictable bowel movements. I will call this from now on my major flare-ups. I first started talking about my symptoms with my primary care doctor. Over the course of a few years, he suggested that I just try to work out more and relieve stress. I have a pretty stressful job. He also suggested things like, just take a probiotic. You're probably having a lot of caffeine, cut back on the caffeine. But nothing that I really did made a significant impact in my life. And I started becoming really emotionally distressed. I was irritable because I had almost daily discomfort. I was really moody, mostly because of my growing frustration. That's something from my perspective most people didn't have to think about, and I'm learning that that's not the case. It's just a lot of people don't talk about it. But it was really sort of driving my life. And there was one day that I was having a major flare-up that I just sort of hit a wall, and I said, I need to do something about this. And so I brought up my computer and I started researching gastroenterologists that accept my insurance, and I just closed my eyes and picked one. Not the best way to do it, but I went in and I made an appointment that week. I went in to see my gastroenterologist. And I think that most people here will realize this is not something that's comfortable to talk about. And so my doctor, when he walked in, he saw that I was really stressed out about the whole situation, and he said, "No, so it says in your chart you're here for a colonoscopy." And of course, I have a really sick sense of humor, and so I laughed. But it totally set me at ease, and more than I have with any doctor, I just laid it out on the table, and I said, here's what I deal with. He said, based on my symptoms, he thought that I should go for a CT scan to rule out Crohn's disease. Also, I had to have a fecal test, which, both of those are incredibly unpleasant experiences. But I was able to avoid the colonoscopy because when I went for my follow-up to find out what my test results were, he just basically showed me the Rome criteria and said, you have irritable bowel syndrome. So I knew at least what I had, and like any good patient, I just hoped he would write me a script for a pill, and I'd walk out the door and I'd start feeling better. Little did I know that was not going to be the case at all. And I started my long journey to really sort of encapsulate what I deal with. Most people will look at me and don't think that there's anything wrong with me. But I struggle on a daily basis. I don't wake up any day feeling great. I wake up most days, I have cramping and bloating. I have bloating so bad, I can't even fit into my work clothes. I just have a range of clothes that I sort of pick on a daily basis what I feel like wearing and what I can wear. That's if I'm well enough to go to work. My doctor did prescribe a medication called hyoscine. It's not really the foundation of my treatment regimen at all because I speak for a living. That's what I largely do, and so having dry mouth to the point of sandpaper makes my job very difficult. And also, it comes with constipation for the most part. So then I have bloating and cramping of a different kind. So it's just weighing that. But I've learned to do a lot of different things. I do acupuncture. I do 2 different types of yoga. I meditate. But the most dramatic changes have been to my diet. And you are right. Until you have a functional GI disorder, you do not realize how much your life revolves around food. And from that point on, your life will do nothing but revolve around food and what you can't have. My doctor gave me a nice stack of papers when I left his office, and it was mostly, what foods you should try to remove from your diet and what you can start reintroducing back, and a nice big old 30-page sheet of what sort of limitations I should make to my dietary intake. And of everything I was told to cut out of my diet, I can only introduce back a handful of vegetables. I can only introduce back things like honey. I'm hypersensitive to artificial sweeteners, which are in everything. It's in cough medicine. I mean, I had a cold, and I went, and when I found out I could not have artificial sweeteners, there was one cough medicine that I could take, and it was not an oral, it was a pill. It's a real problem. Let's see what else. I had to eliminate high fiber foods, cruciferous vegetables, no alcoholic beverages. Any one or combination of it is going to trigger one of my major episodes. And so I feel like I'm that annoying woman when I go out to a restaurant because there's no one plate of food that's on a menu that I can actually eat. I also do a lot of luncheons for my job, and I eat in social situations, and I really can't do that effectively anymore. So in most cases, I carry a bag full of snacks that I know are not going to really trigger anything to the extent that you can predict that. You really can't predict that. So that's really sort of what my daily life's been like. And at least once a year I have a major flare-up, and so I had to talk to my employers about the fact that I had this condition, which is a really uncomfortable conversation to want to have with any of your employers. And on the days that I can't go to work because I feel so bad, I don't want to eat anything, I don't want to leave my house, I just basically lay around and hang out and get behind and work. It's not necessarily that it's something I feel like I'm really managing my life effectively.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, and so the one thing that I would say, I know that there are people here who are developing drugs. I would say please don't focus just solely on certain symptoms. I know that this is something that I'm managing in various ways. I don't feel like I'm eating the most nutritious diets. I'm afraid that I'm leaving myself vulnerable to a lot of different diseases. So please also don't just focus on the symptoms. Like, try to get to the bottom of what's causing it, and help us cure it, because it's something that I'm not the only one suffering with. There's 48% of the people who are logging on through the web. I'm just the one that's up here talking about it. So there's a real need. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Now we'll go on to Carrie.
Hi, my name is Carrie Riley. I actually came down from Syracuse, New York. So we drove my family and I drove 6 hours to come down here. That's how important we deemed this. I was diagnosed finally after years in July. I have severe gastroparesis. I did the 4-hour gastric emptying study, which is not fun at all. I had to glow in the dark. I joked about my kids. I glue in the dark for days afterwards. The 3 symptoms that have an impact on my daily life are the pain and discomfort. And when I say pain, to me, it's like my stomach is trying to work, is trying to digest that glass of water I drank, or that cookie or pretzel I ate because I'm so nauseous and I just want something in my stomach to absorb the pain medication. Or I'm hungry and my stomach's saying, oh, wait, it's time to eat, but you can't eat. But you're hungry, and it hurts because you're hungry. Anybody that's been, you're starving is basically what I'm doing. Discomfort is when I do drink, or if I drink too much or I ate too much, my stomach hurts. I mean, it looks like I'm pregnant, and I'm not. It hurts to move. Sometimes it gets so bad it hurts to breathe because it's pushed up on your lungs, and it hurts. It hurts on your rib cages. It makes your stomach is hard. Wearing clothing is horrible. Like you have different size clothing. I have my yoga pants. I have 4 different sizes of them because I never know how I'm going to be that day. The pain is temporary, but the discomfort will last for hours and hours. Our society revolves around food for pain, for pleasure, for social activities. It's not one thing you can do where you don't have food. Nothing. You can't, you go weddings, funerals, it doesn't matter. It's all food related. It's hard. It's hard to be a part of anything. My friends, family, they don't understand this disease, and a lot of them don't invite me to things. My family, my kids don't get invited to that birthday party or that meeting at school because they know I can't make it or I'm not going to be able to eat the food, so the parents feel weird and don't invite me or my kids. My biggest problem I have lately is lethargy. My kids are 9 and 12. I can't do the normal mom activities. I can't take them to dance lessons, baseball games. It's hard for me to sit through my son's 2-3-hour baseball game without getting sick. And the bathrooms are either very far away or they support a potty. And nobody wants to be sick in there. It's horrible. Even just to come down here, again, it was 6 hours. I had to plan rest periods. We had to drive halfway, spend the night, and then take off some more the next day. It's a matter of, it's not even so much that day, it's the days leading up to it and the days afterwards. I know that the next 2-3 days, I'm going to literally have to plan to sleep almost the whole day and make sure that I can take care of myself. I can't to make sure, even going to the grocery store is horribly challenging. It's between the smells of those wonderful free samples, but even the bakery department, it's a very hard thing to do. And then to know that you can't eat anything in there that you're even buying. I still have to take care of the kids and cook and clean, and it's a very, very hard thing to do. In the mornings are horrible. I wake up in the morning, it's really bad to the point that my husband had to take a different job. So he could be home in the morning to take the kids to school for me because I can't do it anymore. I am very limited on what I can and can't do. Everyone in my family feels this. Unfortunately, my kids are more self-sufficient than they probably should be. They learned how to make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when they were 4 because they have to be able to feed themselves something with mommy's having a bad day. It's very hard to see. My daughter couldn't make it today. She's actually sitting outside or walking around because she's 9 and just even reading my comments, she couldn't get through it all without crying because she's going to die. And it was very, very hard because she wanted to come down and she wanted to be with me and support me, but they couldn't make it. They couldn't deal with the stress of even knowing what I go through. I try to hide it from them so they don't know. They don't know how sick I am. I'm fighting the doctors on a daily basis not to get that feeding tube, so I don't have to see that. It's very hard. This morning was unfortunate. I had a cup of tea at breakfast at the hotel room because I was tired, and I threw that up. And unfortunately, my kids were in the room with us, and it was very hard for them. Our family vacations revolve around medical things. From Syracuse, we go to Pennsylvania, we go to Philadelphia to go see a doctor there because there's nobody in New York that can help me. My date night, that was our date night. We drove to Philadelphia. It was great. That was our date. We don't get that kind of thing. A good day for me isn't a day. It's hours. There's never a day where I can say, oh, wait, this is a great day. No, it's, oh, look, I had a couple of good hours today. And will I have to pay for them tomorrow or the next day? It's, even on a good day where I'm having those good few hours, I still have to stop and rest. I still know I can't push myself. It's very hard. A good day would be not to throw up all day long. To have a little bit more energy and not be able to do something to get out of my house and see my kids dance recital or my son play his baseball game. The bad days do outweigh the good. A bad day, I can't leave my bedroom. Luckily, my bathroom's right next door to it. I can't leave my bedroom. And I'm lucky that I don't end up in that emergency room, which everybody dreads because, of course, you say you're in pain, they think you're a drug seeker, which unfortunately we get labeled very quickly. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm in pain." Oh, wait, you must mean that you have a drug problem. So you're pushed to the back of the line. They don't seem to understand that just because you say the word pain doesn't mean you're there to get drugs. It's very hard to get a doctor, especially in emergency room or urgent care center, to realize that.
Any final thoughts, Carrie? Final things you want to share?
Every day is a struggle. Whether it's being tired, the nausea, and just everything in general is just hard. It's the pain, it's the nausea, it's having to have that shoot bucket in the car to make sure you get there on time and you're there for your kids. And thank you for having us and for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie. And now we have Bette Marie.
Hi, my name is Betty Marie. Thank you. I want to thank the FDA for doing this, and I'm honored to be here. I've struggled so much with my GI condition ever since I was younger, and just knowing that some of what I went through might be able to help somebody else in the future just makes a big difference. I have a mitochondrial disorder, and I have autonomic dysfunction, gastroparesis, overall gut dysmotility through my entire GI tract, esophageal spasms, intestinal spasms, biliary dyskinesia with a smooth muscle disorder, pancreatitis, and chronic constipation. That's just to name a few things. Hypoglycemia and myoclonus on top of all of that. Due to my GI disorder, I've been on IV nutrition for 25 years. And I started out originally on tube feedings. However, my gut did not tolerate that. And so then I progressed onto TPN. And at first I hated it. I wanted no parts of it. But through family, friends, and a wonderful organization for patient support called the Oli Foundation, with that it helped me see the TPN as an enabling device and how it enabled me to live my life. You know, you go from being a dog on a leash all the time to actually, to me, my TPN and my PCA pump are like wings are to an eagle. It allows me to be me. It gives me energy to do the things that I want to do in life. The pain was so severe when I was younger. Oh my goodness. And kind of just like what you mentioned, from having severe pain continuously, I became very good at hiding it. I could look totally fine, but yet be in severe pain. I was very good at joking with, talking and telling jokes as a way of distracting myself. That it was hard for the doctors to really understand that I was in pain. Also, the first thing they go to, oh, it's stress. Take time off. Next thing they go to, oh, you must be anorexic. I love to eat. Oh my goodness, if I could, I'd be eating. So that's just a little bit of the struggles just with getting a diagnosis. And then with a lot of the testing, because it is a functional GI disorder, a lot of the tests come back normal until they finally get around to, okay, well, what are the pressures and what's the motility like? So that took years. Like, it's not something that just happens right away. Thankfully, my parents took me to specialists all over the country in order to figure out and to determine what was going on. As I mentioned, the pain was very severe. I would go into Children's Hospital and live in there 3 to 4 months at a time, several times a year. And finally, we did a lot of trials with different medications, and I've had numerous surgeries, but the pain continued. Finally, we found one medication. I'm on a PCA pump, which is, oh my goodness, that thing is wonderful. With that, I have IV pain medication, and I actually use less pain medication with that. I can just hit a bolus. I get a continuous rate. With that and with managing techniques, I ended up fighting to improve my life, and I ended up working for 14 years, all while connected to the PCA pump and getting my TPN at night. My last few years, I actually worked with my TPN running during the day, right in my backpack. As a side effect of, I've done very well with not many episodes of sepsis, but this last few years I've had multiple episodes of sepsis, and that was very challenging because with that I've lost a lot of functional abilities. So energy is a big factor. Just being able to take a shower, take care of myself. I now have a CNA that comes out and helps me for 42 hours a week. Just doing ordinary, everyday things. And as everybody has mentioned, it's kind of like a give and take with what you want to do. Okay, well, I want to do this, and now I need to rest. But then how is it going to affect me afterwards? Another big way that this has affected me in my life is, as everybody's mentioned, is eating. Everything does revolve around food. I'm just going to take it a little bit in a different way. Due to my biliary pancreatic issues, I can't have any fats or oils. A drop will send me into pancreatitis and the severe pain and stuff. And I've tried going out, buying foods. However, the labeling is just, I wish it was a little bit better. For example, I would buy fat-free frozen yogurt, but yet it would have cookie pieces in it. I would eat it. I'd get bad. I'd call the company. Oh, well, the yogurt's fat-free, but not the cookie pieces. It's tricky. Just like there's some candy, some gummy candy and gummy bears. There's no oil listed in the ingredients. However, I ate it. I'd get bad. I'd call the company, and they'd say, well, oil is used to coat the mold. So it's not really an ingredient, so we don't have to list it. So stuff like that is very challenging because it's still used in making the product, but yet for me, I'm very sensitive and causes a whole chain of reactions. Going out to eat can be very challenging. I love going out to eat. I'm not eating, I'm just sitting there enjoying the meal. Years ago, it was nice because I could maybe take like a can of soup that I could have, and I could ask them to heat that up. Nowadays, it's harder to find a place that would actually heat up a can of soup for me because you're not allowed to take prepared items into the restaurants. But I do enjoy the social interactions. I wish sometimes I can get a waiter or waitress to fix the soup for me. Some other things, the constipation has been a huge issue, the bloating, like all of the intestinal symptoms, the spasms. But with the constipation, oh my goodness, it's not only with the motility of things moving slowly, not at all moving or even moving backwards, but physically at times I'm unable just to kind of push it out, whether it's soft or hard. And then at times it feels like I'm passing razor blades. So something as simple as a bowel movement is not simple at all. And then your whole GI system is interconnected. So you start getting backed up at the lower end. Well, now that's affecting the upper end and how much food you can put in and how much stuff you can drink. So it's all interrelated. You kind of have to keep the lower end moving if you want to try to get the upper end to move. Medications
Any final
help
thoughts?
a little.
Betty Marie? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, one thing with the eating, sometimes it's easier just, I feel so much better if I don't eat at all. Oh my goodness. But I would enjoy to eat. Sometimes if I do try to take a bite of food, you know, the food tastes good, you want to take another bite. You want to take another bite. But usually just 3 bites could fill me up. And then that 4th bite can just send me right over the hill. So sometimes it's just as simple as that. It's just a little bite, could cause a lot of pain. But the pain is one of my biggest issues, and the fatigue. But thank you for trying to come up with this. When I was younger, that's all I kept was like, okay, maybe down the road there'll be a new medication. Maybe there'll be a new treatment or something. But it seems like there's not one thing that really makes a huge difference, but it's a lot of little pieces that kind of come together that help the symptoms and that just make the quality of life during that day a little bit better.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Betty Marie. I'm going to invite, if you want to stay up here, you can, or you can return to your seats, whatever you feel most comfortable with, any of you. And I need to go get that microphone over there, so give me 1 second. I just want to thank you guys so much for your courage. It's hard for me to stand up here and maintain my composure while you're telling about your difficult struggles you've lived with for your whole life, maybe not always as badly as it is now, but can I ask for a round of applause to we give them such an unfair assignment, which is boil everything down to a few minutes. And I know it's so difficult. We are going to be touching on many of the things you talk about. Some of it will be in topic 2. But to begin the discussion, just kind of set the stage, can we have a show of hands to see how many of you heard your story, your experiences reflected in at least one of the women up here? Anyone who, I'm not going to ask you to say it now, anyone whose is completely different? Okay. Then you have represented your peers well, so thank you very much. We are going to dig into this a little bit more now. To start us off, we're going to start with a few polling questions. And this is only going to get at the tip of the iceberg, I think, about what the symptoms are and how throughout your body system. But we have here focused on symptoms that are related to the upper GI, the abdomen and up. And what we first want to notice to see what symptoms we have collectively reflected here and on the web, which of the following upper GI symptoms have you or your loved one experienced in the past year? You can check all of them that apply. Give you a few minutes to do that. Yes, this is unsurprising. Many of them looking like that the most common here are vomiting and nausea and feeling of fullness, followed by heartburn and abdominal pain or discomfort. Okay. With those in mind, I'm going to move to the next question. And on the web, is it roughly the same?
Yes, we had vomiting or nausea as the top most experienced symptom, and then we followed by abdominal pain or discomfort and bloating.
Okay. So now we knew that not everyone might experience every symptom, but of those symptoms that you experience now, looking only at these upper GI symptoms, which one to 3 of these have the most significant impact on your life? And again, you can choose up to 3 of them. All right, so the abdominal pain, most of you who said that you have it have rated it as one of the top 3. Similarly with vomiting or nausea, followed by bloating. And on the web, can we just get a sense of what we're getting?
Yep, similar to in the meeting room, it's vomiting or nausea, followed by abdominal pain or discomfort, and then followed by feeling of fullness or inability to eat a full meal.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's focus on abdominal pain and abdominal pain or discomfort. We heard very eloquently the experiences here. What I'd like to hear someone build upon that and feelings of the abdominal pain or discomfort. And as you describe especially if they're slightly different, what terms do you use and how do you distinguish between pain, discomfort, bloating, and all of those terms? That's very important to us as we try to tease apart what terms mean to people. So would anyone like to volunteer to describe that symptom first? We have the mics and they'll come to you. If you can just say your name first and what condition or conditions you have. go here, and then we'll go over there with Catherine.
Yes. Hi, my name's Catherine. I have gastroparesis. First, can I just say thank you for coming and talking, and thanks to the FDA for even having this meeting. But the way I differentiate pain and discomfort, the best I can explain, is the pain is, both of them are crippling, but the pain is so crippling that I can end up in a ball on the floor, and I can't move. But discomfort, it's a duller pain. I can do things to kind of ignore it, but it's still there. It's just not as severe, I guess.
Sharp versus, the first one's sharper than the second one, discomfort?
Yes, it's much sharper pain, and it's continuous. Discomfort is continuous, but it doesn't, like, I forgot your name. Like you said, the discomfort lasts a very long time, but the pain can come and go.
Okay. I'm seeing some head nods. Those of you that said abdominal pain, you want to raise your hands. If this is your experience and perspective, it resonates with you. Okay. Anyone have a different? We'll come here.
Hi, my name is Lynn Wolfson, and I have gastroparesis and Hirschsprung's disease and dysmotility of my entire digestive tract. I find that after I try to eat, I'm on a feeding tube, but after I try to eat even a very small amount, I get stomach pains. But if I lay down for an hour or two after I get the stomach pains, I'm able to handle them and they can dissipate. But if they continue on further than that, more than the 2 hours that I lay down, and generally when I lay down I have an ostomy, my bag will fill up with gas and also with fecal matter. I generally feel better. However, many times I have episodes where I just continue and the pain just doesn't get any better. And there's nothing that I can do. I just feel totally crippled by the pain, can't do anything. There's so many times I find that when I go to an ER when the pain just continues for 2-3 days a week, and they'll ask me about my discomfort. And I feel so insulted when they ask me about my discomfort. There's something wrong with that word. Discomfort to me is a pebble in your shoe or a wedgie with your underwear. It is not what's happening with my abdomen. And it makes me very angry for them to think that I want to spend the afternoon or the evening or the night in the ER because I have discomfort.
Thank you very much, Lynn. You got a lot of head nods to that. We'll take another one right here.
I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what you were saying and what all the ladies were saying. My name is Elizabeth Saris. I too have gastroparesis. I also have GERD. I also have irritable bowel syndrome and several other health issues we're not going to talk about today. But anyway, I think discomfort is chronic for those of us who have the diagnosis. And I think for the FDA, that's good information. I'm also in the health profession, so my language may be a little stronger. I think when I hear abdominal pain, I think, like this young lady, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, said, can be incapacitating. The discomfort is something we live with on a daily basis. Now, whether the discomfort is horrible that day or I can pull through the day with it, that's variable. But abdominal pain defines true pain that is on some level incapacitating, whether it involves vomiting, ceasing activity, not being able to take a shower. Those are all, I think, just to embellish. And then the abdominal pain with the hospital. I recently had a hospitalization, and many times what they'll do, the nurses have a pain scale, right? And so I was just going to speak to the pain scale, and I guess there hasn't been another way of identifying that. So
I'm going to ask if there are any follow-up questions from you on pain. Yes, go ahead, Donna.
So I'd like to follow up on what you just said about the pain scale. It sounds like you're frustrated with the pain scale, or did I misinterpret that?
I think as health professionals and as the FDA, I think we all have to be good listeners. And I think we really need to be tuned into the patient, not just on a pain scale basis. I think in many situations the pain scale is adequate, and even more so identifying how severe it is so they can administer pain meds or whatever it is they have to do. It's significantly great with children. But I also think that identification of what that interpretation is, and perhaps part of the problem is I'm not sure how educated our medical people are regarding this kind of disorder or regarding any of these disorders. And so, you know, perhaps there's a misunderstanding in that regard.
We have take maybe Tanya.
I wanted to add on to that pain scale. One of the reasons I wasn't quite ready today is because of this pain thing. And so I left out a lot of things because of that. This pain scale, when you go in to these ERs and these people have this pain scale, our pain is not on that scale. Our pain is somewhere way out here. So when we can't get that across to people who don't experience this, and to be in a buckled over, I mean, where you are, you're in a ball, you cannot move, and then have people call you drug seekers or instigate your pain to where then it's even rising further because they want you in this pain scale. And I truly believe it's because of the lack of education. I truly believe that this, oh, well, you have constipation pain. You don't understand constipation pain if you've got this kind of a health issue. Mm-hmm. So I just, for us, I think that needs to be adjusted, or people need to understand.
Carrie and Betty Marie, are your perspectives similar, generally similar? Something different?
One of the problems is when you have the pain and you can hide it, is you don't look like the faces on there, on the pain scale. So I could be like I would be bent over, but yet be smiling. And so that's where some trouble can fall in with others' understanding. But one thing that I wanted to mention that was a little different is the doctors were so focused on my most severe pain with the biliary and the pancreatic, and that the other stuff was kind of overlooked. And it wasn't until 10, 12 years later when I saw a different GI, and he said, well, you know, it's okay. You can have different types of GI pain. You know, this may hurt the most, but you can have the bloating pain. You can have the pain from the stuff backing up and intestinal spasms. And so it was just so refreshing to hear a doctor admit that there are different types of abdominal pain as well, but usually they focus in on just the one.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure that we get to some of the other symptoms, but it sounds like I'm going to ask for folks on the web to write in on this too. Graham, are we getting anything from the web on pain?
We're getting a lot of similar type comments, people talking about sharp abdominal pain, or general aches in the lower abdomen. A few people talking about how pain is generally the sharper and discomfort is kind of more of the ache or the more manageable version of pain. One person said her 7-year-old describes her pain as a cramp in her belly and her back, and a lot of comments like that.
Okay, thank you. So please elaborate on this if there's something in the docket. This is a topic that's of much interest. Yes, go ahead, please.
Just one follow-up question. So when we're talking to companies about the clinical trial and what it's going to look like, and how will we measure how the drug is affecting symptoms, pain is a common symptom. So, and I'm hearing pain and discomfort. If you were having a day where you were not doubled over in pain and you had a pain scale and you had to say, what's my worst pain that I had today, but you had discomfort, would you fill out that pain scale based on your discomfort, or would you consider the discomfort something else that you should have been measuring on a different scale?
Now, Terry, yes.
It's two separate issues because, I mean, on a daily basis, there's discomfort. But you could flare up and you're being pain. And pain, unfortunately, if you're in chronic discomfort, that pain is worse. Because you're in a pain scale, you're at that 5. You're at 105. You're not at 5. Your discomfort is 5 on a regular basis. And that's what they don't understand is we live in that constant state of 5. So when you say pain or discomfort, our discomfort is always at a 5. I need to take that into consideration that you need almost like two separate scales, almost like people in constant chronic pain versus the people who just stub their toe and are in pain. It's two totally different things. Because I can tell you, my kids joke with me, I'm like Molly, oh look, I hurt my toe, I'm like, I don't want to hear about it. Like I understand, but you don't know what real pain is. I live in a constant state of 5. Because that's my discomfort level. But if I'm going to go in the ER, though, I'm going to be much higher. If I'm at that state where I have to go somewhere, I'm much higher. And they don't take it seriously, because you're not.
Well, we have one more comment here from Cecile.
So y'all, I think that question, Donna, is very relative to what's going on or what has happened. So I had a severe episode of functional abdominal pain last Thursday, just happened to have a full day of meetings and conference calls that day. And if you had asked me on Wednesday what my general severe pain was, I would have put it higher than I would have on Friday when the episode wasn't as bad because in my memory was the day before. So I think that if you ask a patient to look at the scale and say, generally speaking, where are you at? If I had just had a severe episode yesterday, then I'm going to tell you, oh, I'm great today. This isn't yesterday. So I think that that's relative, and it's really hard in functional GI because you get away from a severe episode. And so some of us, I'm so sorry for your pain all the time. I don't have it all the time. When I have an episode, it's bad. And in the work that I do, there are certain times when I have lots of meetings and a lot of things going on that I can't afford to have an episode. Generally, that's when it happens, right? But because this is a roller coaster ride, you can ask me the same set of questions today, ask me again next Monday, and ask me again next Monday, and I'm going to answer it differently every time.
Mm-hmm. There's one question from Laura. So frequently when we do clinical trials, we ask people to fill out these scales every day. So because we understand that it can be very variable from day to day. And a lot of times our question is, what was your most severe pain in the last 24 hours? But my question is to you is, do we need to be evaluating pain differently? Do we need to be asking different kinds of pain? Are there different kinds of pains you have that need different questions? Should it just be one question, how severe was your pain? Or do we need more focused questions? Okay, we'll go here and then we'll come to the striped sweater.
Hi, my name's Debbie. I have a diagnosis of gastroparesis and several other GI issues. But I do think, for me, what I experience most often is like a diffuse, low burning and a sort of sour, acidic feeling in my stomach. And I think what I'm hearing is that some people have really severe pain that's very disabling to where you're doubled over, but a lot of us with functional GI problems have chronic, ongoing, severe discomfort that lasts a lot of, like our waking hours, and is very debilitating in terms of doing things like socializing and being able to concentrate at work. But like I would never rate my pain like as 8 or 9 or 10. So it does seem like it would be really helpful when drugs are being evaluated to not just get at the most severe pain that you've had that day, but how much it's relieving the sort of background, ongoing chronic discomfort that a lot of these disorders cause.
Sorry.
My name is Mary, and to address that question, I would think that rather than just using like the Baker-Wong picking scale, that there needs to be just more descriptive terms as well. I mean, yes, it is sharp and writhing at times. Like for me, on an average day, I live with a discomfort level between a 1 and a 2. But on my really bad flare-ups, I have gastroparesis, IBS, and GERD. I'm at an 8. So I would think that for evaluation of drugs, that there needs to be more descriptive terminology for people to be able, okay, is it sharp? Is it burning? Is it achy? Is it, you know, those kind of things need to be in there as well, rather than just the regular 1 to 10 scale.
So maybe we need to ask descriptive terms, and we need to ask things like not just how severe it was, but how disabling it was, how many hours during the day it lasted, all these more pointed questions.
Exactly.
Right, because it's different day and night. How much did it interfere with your sleep?
We heard from the audience, daytime and nighttime.
Yeah, so like how much did it interfere with your sleep last night? Those kind of.
We'll take one more, and then if there's no more questions, it looks like, so we'll take one more here.
I'm Jillian. I have gastroparesis. I have lived with these symptoms for all of my life. And I think to some extent, I have to be coached as to what pain is. I have severe GERD, and if you asked me if it was painful, I would never say yes, because I've always lived with it. I mean, to me, that's not pain. So when you have something you're dealing with for such a long period, it may be painful to most people, but to someone who's living with it, it's just there. Not to erode the discomfort or pain levels that anybody's feeling, but I just know I don't consider it pain anymore after such a long period of time.
Andrew, did you have a question?
For the last string of comments regarding pain and how to measure it, can people comment on functioning? And are there any common themes of not being able to function that we can understand? Well, it seems the numbers don't correlate with people's perceptions of their pain.
I was saying that you should go with the numbers. Somebody could not be able to function at, say, 10, where somebody that has pain all the time, somebody that has pain all the time can function at a 10. Somebody the same pain occasionally can't function.
Are there specific types of functioning that when you say functioning?
When you get the pain constantly, you can function and tolerate more amount of pain, and that could be a 10 for somebody. Mm-hmm. They may rate it as 2 because they're able to function, or somebody else that pain rated as a 10.
So it sounds like you're saying at least it has to go hand in hand. Yes. We have one there, and then.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think there are so many areas that the discomfort can cross that it would be pretty easy to ask people to rate to what extent it affected their ability to fall asleep, their ability to concentrate at work, their socializing with friends, their ability to eat meals. I think you could easily come up with 5 or 10 activities of daily life that participants in clinical trials could be asked to rate the extent to which they suffered, inability to do those things, or their symptoms were relieved.
Right, I'm going to, unless there's any burning questions from here about pain, I think we should move on just for the sake of time. I'm never really quite the most popular because I'm always saying we have to move on. But there is the docket and on the web, and so continue to write this in. It sounds like we could have spent all day on just this issue. I do want to touch upon the vomiting and nausea. We did hear some of it up here. Does anyone have an experience with vomiting and nausea? Again, think about how we talked about pain. What terms do you use to describe that feeling that you'd want to share? We're going to go right here. We haven't heard from you yet.
Hi, my name is Carol Passenkloff. I have severe gastroparesis, and I suffer from unrelenting nausea all day. I take any medicine, anti-nausea medicine that's out there, and it doesn't even come close to helping me with my nausea. I mean, I always explain it to people, like, think about when you have a stomach flu, and it's like you're throwing up and you're so nauseous and you can't move and you don't want to get out of bed. Well, this is what I live with. It's like being seasick all the time. It's like having a stomach virus all the time. It just doesn't want to go away. It's brutal. And, you know, in the beginning I was vomiting a lot. We managed to get a handle on my vomiting. But the nausea, nobody has been able to come up for anything for me for nausea. It's terrible.
I too have nausea on a daily basis. It goes up and down from the moment I wake up in the morning to the time I go to bed. I'm woken up in the middle of the night because I'm nauseous, and sometimes I have to puke. My vomiting has been under control since I first got gastroparesis, but yeah, you can't go out anywhere. You can't do anything for the fear that you're going to just end up vomiting right in front of everyone, or you can't concentrate, you can't focus because that nausea too is just so debilitating. I can't focus on classwork. I can't enjoy conversations because that nausea is just, like she said, it's there all the time. It's like being sick all the time.
Okay, we'll go back here. This is again about gastroparesis. I mean, I suffered from nausea from my other GI issues, but about 5 years ago I started having incredible, unrelenting, severe nausea. The only time I felt good during the day was the first hour that I was awake when my stomach had been empty for about 12 hours. I would take my Zegared, which I take for gastritis and GERD, and in about an hour when I had breakfast, within a half an hour to an hour, I started feeling nauseous with each subsequent meal that I ate. It got more severe to the point that by the early afternoon I just really felt horrible. It is so debilitating, and I didn't really at first realize that it was associated with eating. Once I did, I had a gastric emptying study done, and I was immediately put on domperidone, and I have to say I'm so thankful because I got immediate and 100% relief from the nausea. As long as I take a capsule before I have my lunch and dinner, I have not experienced any nausea in the last 4.5 years since I've been taking it. So I just want people to know about that for those who are suffering with nausea. It really is so miserable, and you don't look like you're in misery, and especially I didn't have any vomiting, so I didn't really look like somebody who was suffering, but it really is miserable, and it did impact so much of my life. And to be put on that drug and to have such complete relief with no side effects has really been so helpful to me. We'll be talking about the treatments in the second half of the portion. I want to take one more on nausea with Meredith.
Meredith, I have gastroparesis and chronic unexplained nausea and vomiting, depending on who you ask. To the nausea, my first gastroenterologist told me early on that he thought chronic nausea was one of the most demoralizing physical sensations that he experienced, and I really felt that is to be very true. I equate chronic nausea, it's very similar to chronic pain. It interferes with your functional activities. My nausea, I had relatively successful treatment, was so bad, and vomiting upwards of 20 to 30 times a day. I kept little Ziploc baggies on my person all the time so I could lean over, puke in a bag, and zip it up for the nearest trash can. A couple of other points about vomiting and nausea. The closest I've ever come to dying from my gastroparesis was actually I inhaled at the same time as I was vomiting. I almost choked on my own vomit. That's a very scary thing. And last point about vomiting and nausea, one of the long-term consequences of vomiting 20 to 30 times a day for several years in a row is that we were talking about at the table, is I've experienced significant dental decay. I am 38, and I'm moving towards full prosthetic teeth in the next couple of years. Long-term consequences.
We want to move on. I just want to see, does this resonate? The experiences about nausea have resonated. If you have more, please, again, write about it in the docket. On the web, are we getting any comments on nausea, vomiting?
A lot of similar comments that people have. Either they're in constant states of nausea, they don't think of nausea as pain, they associate it often with vomiting. One person talking about her child said that she describes her nausea just as feeling sick, and if it progresses to a low moan, it means that she's about to vomit, and a lot of similar comments.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the panel if there's any questions on any of these symptoms that you'd like to know more about or why people raise them. Go ahead.
Meredith, you mentioned that you vomited 20 to 30 times a day, and I just had a question. Are you counting the number of times that you physically, let's say, go to the toilet to vomit, or the number of times something comes out in that one episode at the toilet?
Include maybe what would be described as regurgitation. So anytime something came from my stomach into my mouth. And I stopped going to the toilet because it was exhausting to go 20 or 30. That's why I carried around the Ziploc bag.
Another question, Laura?
It sounds to me like we obviously need to evaluate nausea with several questions by itself. Duration. Is it constant? Is it intermittent? How severe is it? How much does it interfere with you functioning socially and activities of daily living, and then vomiting? Also by not only number of episodes, but amounts. And though that might be very difficult to quantify, but I mean, it seems like, those, because some people have mostly nausea and some people have mostly vomiting, that maybe you can help us, on the web to think about the questions that would be helpful for you to be able to explain it.
I really encourage you to do this homework assignment. Write down the questions. So you can send multiple comments to the web. We don't care how often you hit that comment now button. Just jot them down to answer this question. I think it's really important. Laurie.
And this is actually not on this slide, but it's not on the next one either, I don't believe. But I heard a theme about just overwhelming fatigue. And I was just curious, I think I heard that from a lot of the patients suffering from gastroparesis, if that is something that everybody is experiencing, particularly those of you who may not have gastroparesis as well. I'm interested if that sort of covers everybody.
Yeah. Is the fatigue, can I ask a follow-up question to that? So when you're going to, is the fatigue primarily because of some of your other symptoms that just expend your energy and cause your fatigue, or is it something, even when you don't have the symptoms, even when you have a more average day, not in maybe an intense flare-up, is the fatigue still present? Here, first, the stripes. I'm sorry, I forget your. Okay, go ahead.
But even on the good days, you still are fighting some form of fatigue. All of us with chronic illnesses know about the spoon theory. You have to save your spoons and count what spoons you're going to use for what, if I do this, then tomorrow am I going to be able to do that? No, maybe not, So you have to make judgment calls, and sometimes that means missing things you really want to do, but it just is what it is.
Here, I've lots to say about this.
I just wonder if a lot of some of the fatigue that we experience with functional GI motility disorders is related to nutritional deficiencies that we develop. So like anemia is exhausting, undiagnosed and untreated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to Catherine, and then we're going to go to Carrie, and then I think we'll move on.
I was just going to expand on the malnutrition. I've lost about 20-some pounds since this started, and I was only 117 at first. So the fatigue, even on good days, it's, like you said, even on good days, there is fatigue, a lot of it. It's hard being able to exercise, which
everyone suggests to do to help with the symptoms. You know, with class again, I'm tired in class all the time. It's hard to focus because of the fatigue. But I think it's a lot of the malnutrition, not being able to eat. So.
Thank you, Catherine. We'll go to Carrie.
With the fatigue, I mean, whether we have the vomiting or the nausea, you can't eat. So even if you feel like you're going to throw up, you're not going to want to eat anything. So you're not getting those necessary vitamins. And it isn't just like a one-time thing. I mean, the vitamins build up in your system, so you may not eat for a couple days. Well, those vitamins, you depleted your supply, so it will take you 2 weeks just to build back up to where you're supposed to be. So when you're having a good day or a bad day, you're still depleting that little supply you already have. And it's really hard to keep that balance up. I mean, I suffer from all the time. My doctors are constantly like, oh, you need this vitamin, you need this vitamin. And the thing is, those vitamins, they're not easy to digest either themselves. I mean, they're horrible to take. They taste horrible, which makes you want to throw them up. I mean, I myself have either switched to liquid vitamins, chewable vitamins, and it's just trying to find ones that I can actually keep down and keep my levels up without having to get the IV fluids or the liquid nutrition. It's just really hard to keep the levels up and sustain them, because that's the biggest issue. That's why we're constantly tired, is because you don't keep your vitamin levels high enough. And they say the best source of vitamin D is the sun. Well, I can't go outside the sun. You kidding? I mean, just to walk outside and you get outside, to be in the sun is exhausting. It's just a constant battle just to even keep where you're supposed to be, because of whether it's pain. You can't eat because you're in pain. You can't eat because you're nauseous. It's just a combination of everything that we face on a daily basis. We can't keep that nutrition where it's supposed to be.
Thank you very much. I want to be fair. One more. Is it a different perspective? Okay, we'll take one more, and then we're going to move on to the lower GI symptoms.
Hi, my name is Lynn again. I find that I have to take a minimum of a 2-hour nap every afternoon. Generally, by 2 o'clock, I'm done. I have to rest from 2 to 4 o'clock. I do find there are certain things that if I need to get through the day, like today, that I do. For instance, I went swimming this morning. So I do swim 16 laps in an Olympic pool, or I go to aquasize class. I also go to acupuncture and massage once a week. And I find on those days when I have acupuncture, massage, and or that I swim, I find I can go a little further and eat very little on those days as well.
We'll be following up on these on the non-pharmaceutical treatments after a bit. It is at the time, the agenda says we would be taking a break, but if you all give us permission, we're going to go until 3 o'clock, and then we'll take a break. But please feel free to get up if you need to whenever. I do want to make sure we get to the other symptoms and then talk about a wrap up on this topic. So can we go to the next slide? And if you're on the phone, we're going to be teeing up the phone. And since we're so limited on time with the phone, we're looking for comments. We would welcome your comments on symptoms and ways that you experience a symptom that has not been mentioned yet. So we're teeing that up. We'll come at the end of this brief discussion here on the lower GI related symptoms. So first, we just want to know what is experienced in the room. So we're going to ask to choose all that apply. Which of the following lower GI related symptoms have you or your loved one experienced in the past year? Okay. So many of you have experienced many things. The most frequent being the gas or flatulence. And on the web, what are we getting?
Similar results.
Okay. You've really tested my abilities there. So let's now go on to the next one. So given what you experience, which have the most significant of these symptoms, which has the most significant impact on your life? Choose up to 3 symptoms. So the gas or flatulence comes out as the number one, the most frequently mentioned here, followed by hard or dry stools and sense of urgency. Okay, so we won't be able to cover all of this in the next few minutes, but we'll do as best we can. And on the phone, or on the web, what are we getting?
A little bit different, about 40% for the frequent loose watery stool, hard or dry stools, or rectal pain, 66% gas or flatulence, and about 20% for the other three.
Okay. So I think I'm going to turn to my colleagues. Is there a symptom that you would really like to know more about how they conceptualize it and why they picked it? Should I go with the gas or the flatulence? I don't think we heard about it as much up here, so let's hear it. Can someone explain how they did it? Let's come here first.
So as insignificant as it sounds, gas is extraordinarily painful if it's stuck. And if you have gastroparesis, it does not move. And it's just like having food in your gut. Thus the reason for the bloating and the abdominal pain. And yeah.
So it's contributing to the symptoms that we talked about in the first part of the session.
Correct.
I'm getting a lot of head nods.
You get nauseous. It's a vicious cycle. And so I don't perceive in my situation personally, I don't perceive gas any less threatening than food. I still feel the discomfort we talked about that's chronic. I still can have abdominal pain from it. It's not moving. We have a paralysis of sorts. So, that's.
Thank you very much. Any different experiences or different conceptualizations of the gas or flatulence? Someone raise their hand. We'll go with Meredith.
I just am wondering how much research needs to be done on gas and flatulence as it relates to small bowel bacterial overgrowth. That seems to be a fairly constant thing amongst those of us with lower GI dysmotility or even upper GI dysmotility.
Okay. Did we get any comments on the web regarding this?
We had a few people say that gas and flatulence can be very painful, can cause severe bloating, that it's embarrassing and makes it difficult to go out in social situations and things like that.
Okay. All right. Then I'm going to suggest go ahead. Betty Marie, you go ahead while I'm formulating the question I'm going to ask.
Just on a different note, not about the gas or flatulence, but this may sound a little strange, but when things don't move at all and it gets so backed up, I did a prep for the colonoscopy, and I had to do a 2-day because I'm so backed up, and I didn't even go with that stuff. Over-the-counter medications just cause a lot of spasms and just increase the pain drastically. Not many medications really help, but I would actually have to, I wouldn't go unless I had enemas. And then eventually they were working less and less, but I actually had the plan when I was going to get an enema. Like, it sounds kind of strange, but you just get so uncomfortable, and then, as I mentioned before, the one just kind of then triggers other problems and other issues. It's just a different take on it.
Can anyone explain? We haven't heard sense of urgency described in as much. We heard a little bit up there, but I want to make sure. Are there any different conceptualizations other than what was described on the panel for how you think about that and why it got rated for you?
You were talking about sense of urgency?
Yes, sense of urgency.
With the sense of urgency, just for me, is that if it hits, I gotta go. Because if I wait, it causes so much more pain, and then I can't go later. I can't go at all. So you need to go when you need to go. And then working retail or working anywhere, you can't just get up and go to the bathroom when you need to. So.
And Tanya.
And on that, I had that written, but I didn't touch on that. That sense of urgency, and it's for most of us. I know I have fecal incontinence. If I cannot get to the bathroom, there are times that I don't even know I'm going, and I'm going. And this, when you get to severe stages of this, the colon acts like a plug, and not one cell. When they took that colon out, and this information needs to be discussed, and it's not being discussed. There was not one cell in the colon that was functioning. They weren't dead. They were just in a state of paralysis. So the organ itself looked perfectly healthy. So to the naked eye, to a colonoscopy and a laparoscopy, you could never tell that the colon was not functioning. So when they had to, I had that removed after the perforation for at least 10, maybe 15 years. I had to move the food through my colon, when I was able to eat. And unfortunately, my small intestine is slowing like the colon did. But if these cells aren't functioning and we're losing organs and it's acting like a plug, and as you said, I mean, you can't get cleaned out, you can't go to the bathroom. I guess that what gets these cells started again, is there something that maybe can be a drug or something that can be looked at to get the cells to begin to function again, to get the organ to function again?
Thank you very much, Tanya. So I want to make sure we get to the phone. Are there any phone? Okay, we have no phone. Okay. And then I'm going to give, if anyone on the FDA has a final question before we move into the break. Oh, okay. Hold on.
Hi, my name is Kelly Brzozowski, and I do clinical research in this particular area, and I would just encourage the FDA, as you look at lower GI-related symptoms, that you also explore language here. You know, these are very difficult topics for people to describe, and I think we had a very rich, robust discussion about pain and discomfort and different ways that people feel that. When it comes to the particular symptoms of the lower GI tract, incontinence is not a word that's patient-friendly. And even if you look at the NIH studies that have been done to understand what's happening with leakage in the lower GI tract, the question in the Haynes research is, have you experienced any accidental leakage of liquid or solid stool? And so incontinence is a big word that people tend to correlate with heavy bowel movements or loss of full bowel control. And often the symptom isn't necessarily that. It can be accidental type leakage of smaller volumes, not necessarily larger volumes. And so I would encourage you to really look at some of the research that's been done in this area as you're looking at that particular symptom, because I think incontinence is a really big word that unfortunately many people do not relate to, but yet if you turn around and ask, well, do you experience any accidental leakage of liquid or solid stool, everybody will raise their hand. And I really commend, I think it's Tanya maybe in the front, for actually raising this, because I think this is one of the symptoms that nobody likes to talk about. Nobody likes to say or hear the word fecal incontinence. I've done a lot of research in this area that I'll speak later about, but I just think this is a really important symptom that we get the language right as we work to improve outcomes for this population.
Thank you very much. And what was your name again?
Kelly Brzozowski.
Kelly, thank you very much. We're going to move into the break, but what I want to say, if I can say from our perspective, the planning team, we get so much out of the summaries that get sent to us to help identify who's going to be on the panel, because you use the terms that you want to use that connect with you. So as there are so many symptoms we didn't get to talk about. As you describe them, if you write to the docket or as you're putting on the web, use the terms that make sense to you, and we'll figure out what you mean, rather than feeling like you have to use technical terms, because it's more important, to your point, that we know how you are conceptualizing and how you are feeling and how you are speaking about this with others and with your doctors. Okay? So with that, we'll take a 15-minute break and start again at 3:15. Thank you.